problems. And we will start in about 2 more minutes. So grab yourself a glass of water or a Red Bull, and we will start in a few minutes. I will grab a Diet Coke, and then when I get back, we will start. Okay, so I'm going to start just because we want to end around 6:15. And I just want to say, I know that this summer has been challenging, and that, you know, it's still kind of up in the air. We have more clear guidance from the chancellor and the mayor that schools will do a combo of remote learning and blended learning. Of course, that is all dependent on, you know, the rates, infection rates staying below 3%, number of cases in New York City. I think it's dependent on how other schools and other systems are doing. And I think the New York City school system is keeping a close eye on Atlanta and Florida and Arizona and schools that have already opened up and are doing something similar to what we are doing, and just seeing how it works for them. And I think that we will continue to get more news as we get closer and closer to September 10th, which is supposed to be the first day that kids come back to school. And we will also get more guidance as, you know, we see how the guidelines are met. You know, like schools are supposed to hit certain guidelines with ventilation and having masks and having disinfectant, like all those things have to be put into place. So, you know, we all have good intentions, but we're going to see how that works out. But we are at our second MBA town hall meeting. And if you were at the first one, we're going to do something very similar to it, just because there's so many people, and you know, just having more experience with Zoom and video conferencing is that it's really hard to ask questions verbally. So we're going to use the chat feature, and the chat feature is down below, and you can just click on chat and just type in a question, and Mr. Farrell is going to be monitoring those, and he's going to try to group them into patterns and try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. If we do not get to your question, you can always email me. We will also be sending out a Google form to the same email that we sent this to, so that if you didn't get your question answered, you can just respond to that Google form and say, hey, my question on the thing was this, and I didn't get an answer to it. Can you be more clear to that question? So that's what we're doing. But I'm going to give you some of our ideas of how we're opening and the program that we're submitting to the DOE for next year, and some facts and reasons and some protocols that we're putting into place to keep our families safe. So I'm going to start that right now, I hope. So our top priorities, like before, our number one priority is students, staff members, and family members' health and safety. We know that this is a pandemic, and we're not done with the pandemic. It is still happening. New York City has been better at controlling the pandemic, but there could be a flare at any time. So we want to make sure that students, staff, and family members, our number one priority is health and safety. And then we go on to student academic progress and success. We want to make sure that whether your kid is at home learning or whether you choose to have your child come into school for blended learning, that they are having success and they are academically progressing with their skills in reading, writing, and discussion. We are also concerned about students' social and emotional well-being. We know that this is not an easy time. First of all, teenage years are not easy times, and then add a pandemic onto it, and it's very challenging, and that there are a lot of members in our community who have lost family members and whose family members are still contracting the virus, and that there are some real financial stress as well with jobs and also isolation issues. You know, having to stay away from people is really hard. So we're going to address some of those things as well. And we're going to do what makes sense, right? Like that's the most important thing, and that's something that MBA has always do, is do things that make sense and try to find ways to make that happen. So those are our concerns. Those are our priorities. So on yesterday, we got our survey results back of who is opting in for full remote learning, who wants blended learning. We also got a clearer idea of what teachers are applying for medical exemptions because they may have underlying conditions that make them more susceptible to the COVID-19 virus. So what we found out is that 25% of our MBA families opted for full remote learning. So we have about 400 students. So that's about a little bit over 100 students are opting for full remote learning. And then about 300 students have opted for the blended learning model right now, or some families have not filled out the survey. And if you don't fill out the survey, you automatically get blended learning model, which, so that's where we're at right now. We're at 25-75%. So it's based on that. We also need to make plans based on our teachers' capacity, like what staff will be in the building and what staff will be monitoring and teaching online. So what we have now is 50% of our staff, our teachers, applied for medical exemptions, and 50% will be in school for in-person instruction. And this is what we based most of our model on, is how do we make sure that we have enough teachers in the school and enough teachers remotely to meet all of the students' needs. So we want to make sure that students that are doing their work online have the support and the teachers necessary to make sure that they are able to connect online, that they're able to learn online, and they're able to reach out to people when they need help. And we need the same thing, obviously, for in school, that with 50% of our staff, we need to make sure that we have teachers in every classroom and that they are monitoring student learning, and also with the guidelines of that there are the social distancing, we have to be 6 feet apart. So in every classroom, it's between 7 and 10 students in a classroom with 1 to 2 teachers, depending on the size of the classroom. So with those parameters, that's how we're making our decision on our model. So for students that opted into full remote learning, we discussed this, but if this is your first time, I just want to kind of go over that. When we became full remote learning in March, it was more of an emergency full remote learning. Like we didn't really have experience as educators on how to be remote teachers. And we were playing around with online tools and trying the best that we can. I also shared that we had our highest graduation rate, and our passing rate was around 98% for students passing every class. So students and teachers worked really well together to make sure that they were learning their content and getting to classes and engaging every day in a class. But that was still emergency remote learning. Now that we are more trained on how to do remote learning, it will change for the beginning of the school year, or for the school year, however long it lasts. And we will be doing more live classes so that kids will have programs. They will get programs in the mail, or we will post them online, or do both. And they will be expected to be in classes at certain times. So your kid might have a 10 o'clock math class and an 11:30 chemistry class, and then a 12:30 government class. I would say we're expecting to have 2 to 3 live classes a day. Let me just read what I wrote here. So 2 to 3 live classes a day, and then asynchronous instruction. I just want to say that before March, I didn't really know what asynchronous was or synchronous. So I'm just going to explain it. So live instruction is synchronous instruction. It's kind of what's happening here. We're having a synchronous meeting. We're all here together and we are having a meeting. And then there's asynchronous instruction, which is teachers will post activities online, directions, and maybe a video of themselves explaining it. Or they could post a video and say, hey, I need you to watch this and answer these questions. So that is that there will be a combination of teachers up in, like me right now, doing this and having more of a back and forth discussion with students. And then there will be a time for asynchronous instruction where teachers will post it on their Google Classroom and kids will need to do it. So there will be daily live classrooms. Students do need to be present and on time for those online classes. And then we will have tutoring and small group instruction available as well for students, especially with asynchronous instruction that need a little bit more support with their activities and how to do them. The teachers, so 50% of our teachers have applied to work from home because they are more susceptible to COVID-19 virus. Those teachers will be the ones teaching the students staying at home. And they will have office hours and they will be available throughout the day for student and parent support. Also, teachers will be contacting students and parents to discuss progress. That's something that MBA has done really well and we will continue to do. So it doesn't matter if your kid's in 9th grade or 12th grade, we will be contacting parents and then we will also contact students. But we have found that with remote learning that sometimes students need a little bit more support to keep a daily schedule. So we will be contacting parents about daily schedules and getting a sleep schedule and making sure that kids are up on time and especially specifically being in their live classrooms, because that's the important part about remote learning. We know that teachers really do matter, right? And that they're having a conversation with a teacher, even if it's online, is really important. So we need students to be online and having conversations with teachers and learning from them. But we also know that students shouldn't be in front of a computer for 6 hours and 20 minutes. So we're gonna try to do some creative stuff as well. So our rules, some of our rules and safety for remote learning, students must be present for their live classes and on time. We will be contacting parents when students are struggling with this. Students must use their school names on any video classes, right? Sometimes students to get creative with Babyface 12 or Cool Kid 1. That doesn't really tell us who the student is, so we really need real names when they're having video classes. Students must use their video option for live classes. We need to be able to see students. That's really important. Teachers need to see students so they can monitor their level of understanding. Right now I'm looking at 5 people, but I can look over and see how people are interacting with me. I know some people have chosen to not show their face, and that's fine because this is not a class, right? But if it was a class, I would be looking at your faces to see if you are understanding and nodding. I would also, I know we all have teenagers and we know what they're like. I will also be looking to see if you're there, right? And you haven't walked away or fallen asleep, right? So those things are important as well. So we will need to see students on their video. If students don't want to show their homes, they can still mute, right? We're going to expect to mute. So if there are other people in the house and they're loud, it will be muted. But there are options on everything to put a virtual background in the back so that you are not showing where you live or anything like that. So there's options, and we meet with kids and parents as well. And the school, part of our social emotional student dean's office will be monitoring for misuse and abuse of online tools. And that is going like the chat feature. You know, you should only use the chat feature to communicate with the teacher, or if the teacher asks you for a question, it shouldn't be a thing that you're like, hey, Eliani, what do you think about going out for a movie on Friday night? You know, like that's not the chat feature. That's something you can do offline, off school line. So we'll be monitoring that as well, and we'll be communicating with parents. We want to make sure that the remote learning is meaningful and it's impactful, and that students are learning as much as they can online as they would in person, right? We know that both of these models are not as good as a full in-person school, right? Like it's not going to be the same. We're not trying to make it the same. We're trying to make it so that every kid will learn, and that we can get through this, and hopefully as soon as a vaccine or a treatment comes out, that we can get back to school and we can get back to normal. But we know that for remote learning, we just need to make it as safe and make kids and have kids be online when they should be in classes and learning that way. So we just need to have some guidelines and rules around how that's going to happen. And we want to make sure that parents feel comfortable having their kids online learning, because there's all kinds of things that we've heard about, like Zoom bombing and shenanigans online. So we want to make sure that we are monitoring that and keeping your kids safe online, just like we keep them safe in school. So that's the online. This is the blended learning that we are using to the It has changed since the last time that we talked. We were planning on a two-day model, but with the staffing issue, and also with the COVID-19 rate that other cities have seen in youth. You know, like we have seen that in Florida, the student infection rate went up 137% in this month because they started back to school. And in the US, there have been many states like Arizona, California, Atlanta, like cities have gone back, and states have gone back to school. And there's been a 90% increase in the infection rate of people under the age of 18. So we want to make sure that we limit the amount of movement and the amount of exposure for students and for staff that we can. And also, with only 50% of our staff is about 13 teachers. So we are working with that to make sure that we have teachers in the building to teach students when they come in. So we have decided for a one-day model where kids come in 1 day a week, and that they are remote learning 3 to 4 days a week. And I say 3 to 4 because on Monday we have a targeted support. This would be for students, the IEPs, but also students that may need more support just to help them with even a smaller class size, understand the content. But it's definitely students with IEPs or English language learners for Monday. So those two groups of students would come in 2 times a week, and everybody else would come in 1 time a week. On Monday, and this is not set in stone until we flesh out staff members and who's there and how we can do it, but this is just an example. So like on Tuesday, and we chose Monday for the targeted support because Mondays have a lot of holidays, right? So we didn't want to put a grade on Monday, because then on the holidays, it would be like, if we put 9th grade on Monday, they wouldn't come in for an extra week. So on Tuesday, let's just say, for instance, 9th grade would come in on Wednesday, 10th grade would come in on Thursday, 11th grade, and on Friday, 12th grade. And that would really help us make sure that there's limited movement and exposure to other students, and so that it's 25% of the school would be in at a time. So it's 1 day in person. And then on the other days, it would be a combination of online learning and asynchronous learning. So there would still be live classes like the full remote learning would have. So if the 9th grade comes in on Tuesday, they would meet with a teacher, follow a schedule throughout the day. And then on Wednesday or Thursday, we might do asynchronous learning. It's Tuesday, like, hey, when you go home, I need you to do this stuff. And then on Thursday, they would have an online class with their teacher who taught them on Tuesday, or the teachers who taught them on Tuesday. On Thursday, they would have an online class, and then on Friday, they would do some asynchronous learning. So it's a combo of those two things. The good thing is with this, you get the support from your teacher in like you would on remote learning online. So that's the model that we are proposing because of our staffing needs and because we believe that in a campus, we are in a large campus of 2,200 kids. So in the campus of 2,200 kids, if everybody does 50% of their kids in, then we have about 1,000 kids in the school at a time. And that is really that we are planning in the campus for separate entrances and exits, but there's still a lot of opportunity for exposure for students and exposure for staff at that time. So we want to limit exposure. Not only, I mean, I know that students and younger people may not get COVID-19 as bad as older people, but that they are carriers and they can carry it home to their parents or grandparents that they might live with, or people that they live with that have a compromised immune system. And that might not be my student, my child, but if my child is a carrier and comes and interacts with another child and that child lives with a grandparent, then that grandparent might get COVID-19 and end up in the hospital. And we want to limit that as much as possible. So we really believe that this model is the model that will limit that exposure and at the same time provide the blended learning that parents have signed up for. Advisory is a part of the foundation of MBA, and we're going to continue this in March, April, May, and June. We really do believe that advisory was a huge part of the success that we had during remote learning, so we want to make sure that continues. We know that advisory supports the connection between home and school, and that advisors have parents text their phone numbers, they text, they keep in touch, they make sure that they're able to reach out, and advisors are able to reach out to parents. So we are going to keep that. It's a very successful advisory program. But since we don't want to split up advisories, since some advisories are, some parents have opted for in and full remote learning and some for blended learning, we're going to do all of advisory remotely. So it will be remote 2 days a week. And it is accredited class, so kids are expected to be online and in the advisory at that time. 10th, 11th, and 12th grade advisories will remain the same as much as possible. And that just depends on staffing. Like sometimes we lose a staff member, like they move or they go to another school in the city. Right now we're pretty good. We haven't lost, we have had very limited movement of teachers. So as much as possible, we're keeping those advisories the same. 9th grade advisories, we are going to put a lot of resources into 9th grade. So all the 9th grade parents out there right now, we know that this is very challenging, and to go from 8th grade to 9th grade to completely new teachers is very stressful. No, for kids in person, there's a lot about a person-to-person interaction. So we will put a lot of human resources, a lot of time and effort into getting to know your kids, whether they're in school 1 day a week or whether they are fully remote learning. We're going to make sure that we put a lot of effort into getting to know your child. Well, that could be one-on-one remote meetings. It could be small. We're going to do small group meetings with ninth grade. We're going to have advisories meet more often in ninth grade at the beginning. And hopefully, you know, if depending on the staff member and who your child gets for advisory, you will meet your advisor in the week if you do come. Advisory will have a focus on socialization and well-being. We did this last year. We did a lot of RJ. We're a restorative justice school, so we do circles. So we'll be doing a lot of talking about life, talking about the pandemic, not overly. We're gonna focus on other social emotional topics as well, because teenage years, like I said, are really hard. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's not just the pandemic. There's a ton of other stuff going on. So we're going to talk about that as well and make those connections. And advisors will continue to be in frequent contact with parents and families. So you should expect that. So we will continue to have our strong advisory program. So in school, if your child has signed up for in school, we've been doing a lot of focus on that because, you know, this is the big debate of is in school safe? And, you know, there's the debate on both sides about safety of in school education. So we're doing our best to meet the safety regulations. I think that as parents, you have to think about your own child and make sure that they're able to follow these rules and regulations, because this is not, you know, your child went to the bathroom too many times during a non-pandemic, right? This is a pandemic, and the consequences are severe, right? For some of our staff and our families that might have situation, and I mean families, I mean our MBA families, like our students' families that meeting our schools to keep our kids as safe as possible and not contract the COVID-19 virus. We're trying really hard to make rules and regulations and protocols, and we're going to be enforcing them. So we want to be upfront about what those are. Masks must be worn at all times, over the nose and mouth. So this is the number one way that that doctors are telling us is a way to prevent the spread. So masks must be worn at all times, except for lunch. And that's the only time that they're not worn, but all other times masks must be worn. The bathrooms at MBA are really small. The boys' bathroom is particularly small, and there is no way to social distance 6 feet in the bathroom. So we are having a new protocol for the bathroom, is that by appointment. It sounds weird, but what I mean is in the class of 9 kids, if I have a student raise their hand and say, "Miss, I have to use the bathroom," instead of giving them the hall pass and say, "Go use the bathroom," to call the dean's office, the student life office, and I'm going to say, I have a student in room needs to use the bathroom, and they're going to tell me, "Okay, you're 4th in line. We will call you when the bathroom is ready." And then we will get a call when the bathroom is ready, and then the hallway monitors will monitor the student going to the bathroom. I mean, like going to the physical room that is the bathroom, and wait for the next one. So we're going to do it that way to limit the movement in the hallway and to make sure that the bathrooms are a safe area for all students. There's also no movement by students in the hallway. Students will remain in one room, and teachers will go from room to room. So students will stay in the same room for 6 hours every day, or however long the school day is. And they will not be allowed to go out into the hallway and take a walk, or to go talk to a guidance counselor without an appointment, or you know, any of those things that happen in a regular school day, we're going to limit that movement because we want to limit the exposure to students for the COVID-19. So we're taking those things pretty seriously. Protocols, as per the DOE, we are having daily temperature checks for students when they come in, and we will have thermometers in classrooms and available in the school. If a student has a fever, we will put them in the isolation room. We will contact the parent. I also talked about the isolation room as the last bullet point. So there is an isolation room, a fever or exhibiting symptoms. We will have a staff member monitoring the isolation room. We will call the parent, and depending on the symptoms of the student and the age of the student will either be sent home, or the parent will need to pick up that student, depending if the symptoms are severe or the child is young, in a timely fashion, because we only have one isolation room and we can't have multiple kids in an isolation room where it's no longer an isolation room. So we're going to count on parents to be available to come in and pick up their child if necessary. And then so that's the daily temperature checks. There is no outside lunch. Once the student is in the building, they cannot leave the building. So there will be bagged lunches from the cafeteria that will come down to the classrooms. Or you can send a lunch with your child, and they will eat it in the classroom. And there's no student movement in the classroom. I know that some students are excited to go back to school to socialize. The direction from the chancellor is that even during student lunch, it should be a working lunch now, that they can continue to do their work while they're eating. So it won't be a social time. We won't be pulling desks together to play Uno or like any of that kind of stuff. There is no real student interaction except for educational. So I want you as parents, if you're sending your child to school, know serious about that we're not going to have kids socialize in a non-educational way. I mean, in an educational way, it's not the same. There's no think, pair, shares. There's no group work. There could be a discussion amongst 8 to 9 kids in a classroom, but most of the work will be independent work, just because that's the nature of the pandemic, is that it's a lot of stuff doing on their own. So we are limiting student interactions. Let me just go to the next one just in case I'm, okay. So I'm sorry, I just want to talk about a couple other things. In school, there are six schools in our building, including a middle school and 5 other high schools besides us. And we are working as a principal board, for kids to come in and to figure out entry and exit protocols, because what we don't want is all the kids exiting or entering at the same time, because, you know, I think that it's going to be hard as a teenager not to get excited to see your friends and want to hug them and want to, you know, do a fist bump or like a handshake, or be close to their friends. It's really hard. It's hard as an adult for me not to do that. And so, you know, we're trying really hard to set the rules and routines and protocols around that, including entry and exit. We're going to try to stagger the time that kids come in to our entrance, and we're going to stagger the time that kids leave, so that it kind of helps kids not then decide to go play basketball at the playground or take the train home and sit right next to each other, because then that will make all of the stuff that we're doing at school to keep kids safe a moot point if they then go and hang out together after school. So we're counting on parents to not allow that to happen, because we know that the CDC said the best way to prevent and limit the spread of the COVID-19 is, you know, staying in your own family, right? Keeping in your own little germ bubble, to take Miss Gruda's phrase, stay in your own little germ bubble, and you know, stay 6 feet away from people that you don't live with and that you don't have normal interactions with. Wear a mask, and then of course always temperature tracing and tracing. So there's those things. So there's all those rules. We're going to really strictly enforce them. We want to make sure that we keep our community safe. Students, families of students, staff and families of staff, we want to keep them as safe as possible. You know your child best. You know, if your child is one that has to move around all day and will have a hard time sitting in the same seat for 5 to 6 hours a day, you know, you might want to consider what option you are using. And also, we will be strictly enforcing these guidelines. So, you know, the bathroom use, you know, I think like when I go to an event, like a concert or something, and I know there's a lot of girls at that concert, and I know the line for the girls' room is going to be an hour for me to get into the girls' room, I make sure that I don't drink a lot of water, and that I prepare for that. So, you know, the bathroom might be a situation that some kids might have a hard time with, because there will still be a significant amount of kids in the school, probably about 1,000 in the whole building, and probably about 100 or so at MBA. So the use for the bathroom will be limited. So I guess if you're sending your child, I would talk about like ways to make sure that, you know, they're not drinking as much water all day or whatever they are, that is going to happen, because it's just impossible for us to social distance in the bathroom. And the boys that are maybe listening right now know how small our boys' bathroom is. It's only 2 stalls, 2 places for boys to use the bathroom in the bathroom. It's a really small bathroom, and the girls is also very small as well. So I just want to bring that up because as a parent, I would want to know that before I sent my student to school. And I mean, I want to say a couple other things because they might come up in the conversation, but you know, there are strict guidelines on what to do if a kid gets, if we find that there's a case of COVID-19, and there's different protocols. Like if a student has symptoms of COVID-19, they're isolated, they're sent home, they must have a check, they must do a COVID-19 check before they come back to school. If it's more than one, and then if it comes back positive, then the students and the staff members that student has been in contact with will need to quarantine for 14 days at home. And then if it's more than one student in the school that has contracted the COVID-19 virus, then that school will quarantine for 14 days. And so that's some of the protocols. It's also on the New York City DOE website that we're gonna work. We have a building response team that will be working on those protocols and messaging out parents. So if we know that, you know, your child is in 11th grade and they were in Mr. Hull's class, and Mr. Hull, one of the students in that class has tested positive for COVID-19, then we will contact you, every parent, and we'll say, hey, look, someone tested positive for COVID-19 in your class. We won't tell you who because it's confidential, but you will need to quarantine for 14 days at home. Don't leave your house. And after that quarantine for 14 days, then we will resume the blended learning model again. So that's kind of the idea around that. It's all a work in progress still. This is the first time we're opening school with a pandemic. So we're trying the best we can to make sure, again, our first priority is safety and health. You know, there's been over 160,000 deaths in the country. So we want to make sure that we limit that and make sure that we keep people safe, keep people healthy, and keep people learning the best that we can. So Michael Farrell, do we want to open it up to the questions that you've gathered?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Ms. Bolsonetti, the first group of questions has to do with just what you were speaking about, applying for remote learning. Is the deadline passed? Is it too late? And can parents still apply for that if they feel their children would be best suited for it?
Yes. So the initial deadline was for us to get an idea of how many kids will be remote and how many kids will be blended, but parents can opt into remote learning at any time. So if you are thinking, hey, remote learning might be the best for my child, there is still time to go on the website and apply. If you need help with that, I know that Eliani has been helping, our parent coordinator, who is fabulous, has been helping parents sign up and work through that. Eliani's also been supporting parents with talking to their children about the differences between the two and what school's gonna look like in the fall. So if you need support with that, please reach out to Eliani. She is really amazing.
Okay. The next group of questions have to do with technology. Is the DOE still providing students with laptops and technology for blended and remote learning?
Yes. Either the school or the DOE will provide you with technology. Some kids probably have it from last year. So if you have your technology from last year, then we're counting on you to use that. If there's a problem with that technology, that would be something that you would, I guess, you know what, I'll put out a form, a Google form to all parents, and we'll find out more, I guess, in September. But if there is like a problem with it, or you lost the power cord or something, that is something that we can resolve. But if you don't have one at all, it's important that you have technology, and we will be providing you with that.
The next group of questions
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry, Mr. Farrell. I guess if you already know that you don't have technology, you can email, is it okay, Eliani, that they email you? That you can email Eliani just so we can keep it all in one place. And Eliani will alert us, and we'll figure out a way to get you that technology before the start of school.
And if your technology, if you have an iPad that you borrowed that it's messed up, or power cord is messed up, also email me. I can give you the resources to contact them directly so they can replace it.
Mm-hmm. And if you do have internet issues, I know that the iPad has been a solution that the DOE has come up with, that it has a hotspot in the iPad. I don't know, I heard mixed reviews about it. But if you do have some kind of internet issues, then please contact Eliani and she can help you through that. Just as a side note with that too, is that whether you choose blended learning or remote learning, your child will need to have an electronic device, right? And we had kids last year really try to use their phones. They were like, I don't need a computer. I'm just going to use my iPhone or my smartphone. That did not work out very well. So if your child is telling you, Mom, I'm just going to use my smartphone, or Dad, I'm just going to use my iPhone, please get a computer or an iPad, because the smartphones are not good for learning. All of the activities that teachers are doing, it's not great. And if you do blended learning, your child is expected to bring their computer or iPad into school on the days that they come into school, right? So you don't keep that at home and have a different one at school. You have your either personal or school provided iPad or computer that you will bring to and from school with you, because we don't want people touching a bunch of different computers. You will just use your computer that you have with you. That was it, Michael. What else?
Okay, the next group of questions have to do with credits. First question is, how can the school help students that are behind in credits in the blended or remote learning phase?
So I'm just stepping outside because my husband's starting to make dinner and it gets noisy. So if my connection goes bad, someone has to alert me, okay? I mean, that's our number one priority is getting credits. We want to make sure we're doing an inventory of credits. Our seniors are obviously all of our students are top priority, but our seniors are ones that are urgent because we want to graduate them end of the year. But we're looking at all students' credits and we're looking at ways to ensure that kids are making up credits. If they did struggle in the past, it's okay to struggle, right? But we just want to make sure that we make up those credits. So that will go into their program if we can fit it into their program. If not, we run a very robust Saturday academy and PM school and also vacation academies. Just because we're remote doesn't mean we're not going to do those programs. So your kid will still have the opportunity to come to Saturday academy and come to after school activities. And even if it's remote, which it will be, we're not going to have kids come in on a Saturday, that we can get kids the credits that they need to make sure, like, if a kid lost some ninth grade credits, they were ninth grader last year and they just didn't get algebra and they missed a credit in algebra, that they'll make up that credit hopefully by the end of January. And we can check that off and move on. So, we're always very strong at making sure that kids make up their credits.
So next question in that category has to do with seniors applying to college. How will this affect a senior applying to college? Will it be extremely different?
Yeah. So we still have a CBI counselor, which is a college bound initiative, which is a program that we pay for. And the reason we do is guidance counselors are using, but always as, I guess, as like knowledgeable about how to apply to college. That's a very different skill, a very different content knowledge of like all the stuff that you have to do. Applying to college is very difficult. So we still have him, and he is going out through advisory, but one-on-one. It's something that we did last year, but like by March, most of our seniors had already applied to college and were getting their, all our seniors had applied and they were getting their acceptance letters back. And so we are coming up with a schedule of how to do that. It will probably, I'm just going to be honest, a little bit more parent involvement. When it's easier for them, it's easy for us to get them online and that kind of stuff. So it will involve a lot of collaboration between parents and the school to make sure that every kid is signed up. But we're still using our advisories, our 12th grade advisories. The juniors, our rising seniors this year started their personal statements last year in advisory. And we're still doing that work. So we're committed. We always have 100% of our kids have applied to college or another avenue. Some decide to do like a trade school afterwards to become an electrician or a mechanic. A couple of kids have decided to go into the military. So we always have a plan for after graduation, 100%. It's usually 98% of our ride to college, with the 2% being the other ones that I named. And we're committed to that. We're not gonna back down from that. We're gonna make sure that that happens.
We have another question regarding remote learning. If a student chooses remote learning, but they would like to switch to blended learning down the road, at what point can they do that?
So there are certain times that the DOE has put out. I don't specifically, I think it's quarterly. So we're on quarters. So I don't know if it'll go exactly with our quarters.
but I think quarterly, the DOE has said that if you want to switch from remote to blended, that you're able to do that. So our quarters are usually like November. So is that right, Mr. Hull? I think it's November. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's around November that you might be able to opt back in. I can take a look and see if there's any more guidance on that, but I know that they had said quarterly that they would say that if you go from remote to blended.
And the last question that was submitted to us right now, Ms. Bolsonetti, was when should parents anticipate a schedule for their child for the upcoming year?
I mean, I would say September. I will try with the blended learning. We will try to make it more concrete on the day that students will be coming in for grades so that you can prepare around that. So that you can be like, oh, my kid's always going to be in school every Thursday. And then you know that, so you can make plans for September and October based on that. You know, the actual, like, so even though it says 50% of our staff will be in school, staff still have the option, just like parents do, that they might apply for a medical exemption. So right now it's 50%. We could have more than that. We will not have less than that, but we could have more depending on if something happens to one of our staff members, or they were like, you know what, I have asthma, but I'm going to give it best, and then it gets closer, and they're like, you know what am I crazy? I can't go in with severe asthma. I'm going to apply for an exemption. That, you know, that's always open for them to apply. So, you know, like programs, we want to make sure that when we come up with the program that it's pretty concrete for your child, so that it's not like, hey, we gave you a program August 21st, but September 7th, we've changed the whole thing because, you know, this happened. So we want to make sure that whatever we give you is concrete. But for the blended learning, you know, we'll try to get you one before the end of August that tells you what day your child will be coming into school. Is that it? Are those all the questions?
Those are all the questions at this point, yes.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna send out a Google form just to get your thoughts and maybe you can even type it in the chat so that we can hear later about what your thoughts are on these models, what your thoughts are about going back to school, so that we have an idea. So if people could just write in the chat, just like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I applied for remote learning and I'm really happy I did, or I applied for and I'm really happy I did, or I'm still concerned about this, that kind of stuff. So, or letting us know if there's any issues that you have, because Mr. Farrell and whoever can collect those, and we can talk about that as a team, because your voice really does matter. And I know even if it's the typing voice, but we are going to send out a Google form so that we can get more information from parents. And I really appreciate the parents that are on here right now and that are filling out those forms, because I know that it takes up time, and this takes up time, and we're really, really, really grateful that you are here and part of this community, and that you are lending your voice so that we can hear parent voices to help us through this. But again, you know, our number one concern really is your child's well-being. How COVID-19, even though it doesn't always impact youth the same way that it impacts elderly people, we're still unsure about the long-lasting effects of it. So we want to make sure that we stay as safe as we possibly can as a community. We value every single member of our community, including families. You know, we know that, you know, people students and teachers may live with people that have immune compromised, that we keep safe. And we miss everybody. You know, we really do. We miss our students. We miss being in school. I miss students dropping into my office and, you know, having a piece of gum or asking for a piece of candy or just chatting with me or, you know, complaining about the day. You know, like we miss all that stuff. And we're really, really looking forward to the time that we can all go back to school safely and that we can go back 5 days a week and we can have senior trips and we can have field trips and we can go to Philadelphia and we can just have fun. But until then, we're going to work our hardest to make sure that everybody's safe, everybody's learning, our kids are going to college, and that we stay in touch. So I hope everybody knows my email address. It's kpaulson, KPOLSON @manhattanbusinessacademy.org. Please, email me with any questions or concerns. I'm checking my email multiple times a day. Thank you for coming here. I guess that's it. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I actually love seeing everybody, so you know I could stay here all day. But for now, we're going to say goodbye. Anything in the chat that you want to tell us or anything that you want to email us, please communicate with us. We're here for you. We love to hear your voices. So that's it. We're good, Mr. Farrell?
We're good. Thank you, Ms. Polsonetti, and thank you everyone for participating.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.